Hey everyone, welcome to the SIG Node meeting on September 2nd, 2025. First up, we have Alima.
Okay. Yeah. Hey everyone. So just to reintroduce myself, my name is Alima, and I'm a new contributor for Microsoft. And I've been working on this issue where essentially it's a bug where the documentation and the implementation mismatch. It's for, let's see, qubit pod start SLI duration seconds. So this is in terms of the current status of things. This has been implemented and verified correctly, where now it does exclude in container runtime and is only uh, stateless pods. But there's an issue in the documentation for this where it says that the pod has to be immediately schedulable, but it also says that it needs to be measured from pod creation timestamp. I feel like in the implementation, we cannot guarantee that the pod can be immediately schedulable. So I feel like, and also because this is a keyword metric, I feel like we don't want to include that pre-scheduled latency. So because of that, I'm thinking that we have to change the documentation as well. Um, then when I looked a little bit more, I found these three metrics in the docs, and I put it in the doc in here too, kind of listed it out. Basically, this is the one that my issue is working on. And then we have these three right now. So uh, we have two that are from pod creation to pod running. It's just this is the only one that actually excludes image pool and in a container. I did find one that has qubit that starts not from pod creation, but from qubit seeing the pod to pod running. But then it includes image pull and in a container time. So I'm wondering, should there be a new metric to like match this SLO? Because right now, like this just cannot be implemented.
Good question. Yeah, I do agree that including the scheduling latency isn't feasible in the kubelet. So that piece of it.
Yeah, so I'm thinking like I guess I just wanted to converge on what should be the metrics. Like maybe this stays from pod creation. So the documentation changed where it stays from pod creation. We change this to not say this, and it'll start from pod creation. And then later a new metric where it'll kind of match this metric where it'll start from qubit seeing the pod, but then we just add the aspect of it excludes image pull and in a container runtime.
I
I
thought,
think, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, does image pull happen sequentially before the containers start, or are we like pulling image, starting container, pulling image, starting container? I forget.
I wrote down notes for that. Let me see.
We do it sequentially. Like we do next image pool after previous container post start event.
Yeah, so it almost would be seems tricky to even exclude the image pull at all because
Mm, I think the way I need to, sorry, it's been a bit since I did this, but I think the way that I implemented it was that I figured out what happened first because it happened like it's either image pulling or in a container starting, right? So I just like I was able to implement it correctly. where like whichever one happened first, I would start counting, and then if there was an overlap, I wouldn't count that. Does that answer your question with that?
The problem that I'm thinking about is like images are. Is it excluding init container image pull, or is it excluding image pulls and like any image in the pod?
Both.
Because
sorry, init containers like running.
right. So when it's saying excluding image pulling, it means the containers in the pod, not the init containers. I mean, it is also excluding the init container pull because it's excluding the time that it takes for the init container to start. But in addition to that, it is also excluding the container, like regular containers image pull time.
Yes.
Which seems tricky to do because you would have to pause in between because we're pulling the images sequentially as we're going through the containers. So we're starting a container, well, pulling an image for the first container, then starting that container, and then we're going to pull the image for the second container, then start that container, and so on. So I'm confused how we would even, like, we would have to like culminate that startup time, but like pause it during the image pull, which seems kind of odd and annoying. So I'm wondering if we've ever had a metric that actually gets close to
images pulled for init containers and main containers. Like,
we could, but we don't.
They
or do we?
We do. They can be pulled in parallel.
No, we don't pull them in parallel. There's no setting for that.
We don't pull this in parallel.
So
another complication will be, another complication will be if while container, like last container is still starting, first container start restarting again, like crash looping. So it will be even more complicated. Like how do you measure time in this case?
Okay, I guess I had this misconception where images pulled for init containers and like the main containers could be pulled in parallel. But you're telling me that we don't pull that in parallel. Okay.
Yeah, in fact, there is a post-start event happens, and next container image will not be pulled before post-start for previous event will complete. Even though like previous container may be running, and if post-start is still executing and it's executing sequentially, the next container will not be started yet, or image will not be even start pulling.
There's one exception to that where we get a context timeout and you try to pull the same image twice, and we're doing two pulls in parallel, which can happen.
Okay, so first images pulled for init containers, then they run it sequentially.
And there's so the kubelet can feel like it's been too long, right?
Okay.
Could be a 20 gigabyte image. We continue to pull it, and we only pull the image once because we don't want to pull 20 gigabytes twice. But until it's actually completely pulled down, you're not going to have a success unless it's lazy pull, right?
But from the kubelet's perspective, the image is pulled. Like in lazy pull cases, the CRI is lying, which is fine. But like, so for the purposes of this SLI, we can't really you don't consider that case.
Right. And, various clouds can prefetch images. And again, we do support parallel pull on those. Right. So.
Wait, I'm sorry. I think I'm misunderstanding. So when do the main images get pulled? Is that after all the init containers
ensure image?
Yeah, so it is after all of the init containers are running, but it's happening interleaves with starting the container. So it's like container 1 image pull, container 1 start, container 2 image pull, container 2 start. rather than
Okay.
image 1, image 2 pull, container 1, container 2 start.
Okay, I understand. So first, all the init container images get pulled, then init containers, and then
No, init containers.
main images.
First init container image pull, init container starts. Second container image pull, second container init start.
Oh, okay, I see.
Maybe we should document this somewhere. I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah, in fact, we have a discussion about this in one of the caps proposed. People want to have images pulled in parallel, but there are so many dependencies on this logic in some tricky pods. Like some pods will modify tags for images for like first, like init container will modify tags for images, so a regular container will pull this image by that tag. So there is a dependency present. So there is a cap proposing how to start downloading images in parallel. But that said, like for metrics, I think change, we need to account for this current behavior.
Yeah, so I definitely am a fan of creating a metric so that we can actually properly judge how we are doing against this SLI. I think the way to do it would basically be like counting the amount of time it takes to start the pod generally, but you'd have to carefully exclude parts of the pod creation process. So it might be you'll have to pass context around a bunch to make sure that you're like ignoring all of the init container time and ignoring all of the image pull time. But I think it is technically possible, but you'll have to like pause the accounting during like interleaved.
Okay.
And of course, there's unpack cost as well, and it just gets more and more complex. The more optimizations we put in, the more issues you may have with understanding all the variations.
Okay, that sounds good in terms of like the images, but then in terms of where we want to start, would we want to start from pod creation or from Qubit seeing like the pod for the first time?
Qubit seeing the pod because
Gotcha.
I guess if it's stateless, then they'll be pretty equivalent. Like the amount of time that the qubit will take between seeing the pod and like starting the pod is like basically the amount of time that the CRI will take to create the pod, which will be creating the networking stack. Like that's happening. So given its state, I would count it from when the qubit first sees the pod personally, so that we're accounting for the entire creation process and all the work that's going in.
Okay, great. And then if we were to do it that way, though, do we need at all to keep this where it starts from pod creation? Or just like actually edit the one that I've been working on to be from Qubit seeing a pod?
This brings up a great question. We don't really consider pod created state to be separate like we do with containers. In containers, you create the container and then you start it, right? But we don't do that with pods today. I think you could probably merge this conversation with that and actually introducing a pod created state. We've been talking about that for quite a few years.
I mean, I think functionally what we're looking for is pod run with a pod created. So it's whether it's container, if we're counting just container start time, then it's after the pod is running. If we're counting for the full pod duration, it's from when the qubit sees it. And since the name of it is pod create, like I think it's like from when the qubit sees it makes the most sense in terms of like tracking the entire life cycle of the pod.
Okay, then if that's the case, well, okay, I'll look more into the images, but in terms of this, that means that I would also edit this documentation to remove that. I think that makes no sense, right?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we might want to check with SIG scalability to double check that change makes sense. But I think that that's more accurate. There are a couple of hands. I think Satiris was first.
Yes, my question is like for these metrics, if the corner case where you have the big image, you started the pod, it is downloading the big image, but in the meantime, you have destroyed the pod. Is this handled in the code or?
In the meantime, you have to what the pod?
I think he said start.
So my understanding is the sequence goes pod start, which includes run pod sandbox in the CRI. Then it will sequentially go through the init containers, image pull, init container creation, all the way until it finishes the init containers and all the post start things that they need. And then it goes into the regular containers, which means that the image pull is always basically tied with the creation of the image that it's running.
Yeah, but I mean, in the case that the pod will be destroyed before that.
So and then in that case, the image does get fully pulled because we don't have context deadline canceling in the kubelet for image pulls. So, but I don't necessarily know we need to track it like that case in this SLI because that's not a pod that ever actually ends up starting anyway.
Okay, because I thought that in the code I saw that it was checking the state of if the download was there. So I was thinking in that case it will wait until it is there. But yeah, okay.
I think ultimately the image is pulled either way. I don't know exactly how the kubelet reacts to the pod being deleted early, but like that image pull finishes one way or the other. Don, your hand?
May I ask you why you need those metrics? What is the goal for you? Because I feel like without understanding your goal, it is hard to say you need this one or you need that one. For example, from the creation to the initial every container pod is running state, it is meaningful. It is meaningful. I agree with people say, oh, there's no clear way for you to exclude it of the image pooling and even in init container. But itself to measure the pod creation time and to the pod initial start, actually you measure some level of the end to end. Okay, container could be crashed, right? Restart. But you measure end to end from the scheduling, like we receive this request, and then you create. So you measure. I want to understand. Is that what you want to measure? And another thing, it is the first one. It is the Kubernetes, so that creation, right? So Kubernetes itself, which is being already based on the node. So that is more measure of the node agents, including Kubernetes plus container runtime, their performance. But the second one, without excluded the lead container. So depending on what you measure, right? If you want to see the fleet-wide like a diversity, like the workload, maybe it's not really meaningful, but you could, from the giving a cluster and roughly consistent of the workload, you could figure out some outlier all of a sudden, right? So you could figure out the new rollout, maybe cause some delay, introduce some problem. So all those kind of things are meaningful, depending on what you want to measure. Here we are keep this kind of came from the node perspective, of course, then you see the participation don't meaningful, but actually do have the significant important things. And also node actually, from node expose those kind of things actually makes sense because node knows when pod creation time steps, plus when the pod is running state. Right? Then actually that's even it's Kubernetes expose those information, but actually it's end-to-end information to some extent, right? So that's depending on you need to tell us what you want. Then
And
we
I think Don, that's the right question. And then also within that, are you looking for optimal SLI or when it's under pressure? Because if it's under pressure, you're getting pressure notification events that you're running low on storage. So we've got to get rid of some of these images first before we can finish pulling down the other. Where are you really looking for the overall system performance perspective? Or are you
exactly.
I'm doing transactions on a pod and they're small is different than, oh, I've got storage always under pressure. Can we optimize that? I think it's two different SLIs.
Okay, yeah, I think I agree with that. I had this misconception that these metrics are more like I didn't view these metrics as like us being the audience or the users.
Oh.
So I think I need to like think a little bit more about like what exactly you want to be measuring. But yeah, I'll get back to you on that.
That's
Sure. So next time, I hope you first tell us who are those users about those metrics. What kind of things you want to see? Right? For example, you told me, say, oh, we want to through those metrics, combination of the metrics, figure out the node performance, and then we propose something together, and then next one I want to say end to end, right? So tell us what you want CUG from the right. So that's why then we can work together. But all the metrics here accepted arbitrary. I haven't looked at those metrics for but the arbitrary excluded init container and also image pooling. I feel it's hard. I agree with Peter. It's hard to do that one. And also might not that meaningful. You spend a lot of time explaining things, might not accurate, and also it's not user want. You measure nothing, right? So for me, it is if you measure that without getting that, you maybe got that more accurate data. But for a given cluster, real production, actually admin can using that data to say, oh, how I'm going to based on that data, optimize my cluster, right? Optimization could be, oh, how I optimize poor image. I can find the bottleneck and then break down more detail of the measurement. And then I say, oh, optimize image pooling, or optimize my scheduling, optimize something based on certain things. So that it is more meaningful. I just want to share with you. So next time, tell us what you want, and then we can work together. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's because also this is my first issue that I've been working on, and I'm just reading the documentation, and I'm also reading how to like kubelet. So I'm just trying to also match. Like I was just trying to match like, oh, is this a kubelet metric, or like trying to measure the performance of a kubelet. But yeah, I completely understand that. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lima. If there are no other notes there, we can move to 134 retro. So I will share my screen. So I did this together today. I might have messed it up, but I just shared it with SIG Node, and I will also put it in the chat, and I guess I can also put it in the meeting notes. So yeah, today we have our 134 retro. 134 was a pretty productive release, which is really exciting. We had another one. 133 was also similarly really productive. So very exciting there. We had 39 tracked and 32 merged. So we actually have a historical high in completion rate, which we also had last release. So we're continuing to improve on both choosing the amount of work that we're doing and doing a lot of work. Also, we don't have quite a record for the number of caps tracked, but so we're continuing to be wildly productive, having a lot of work done, and completing the work that we commit to. So that's really exciting. Yeah, so we do this just infrequently enough that I always forget how we do it. But if anyone wants to put down some thoughts and feedback in this document, we can maybe go through these things live. Or if anyone wants to just chime in and say some feedback for the release. Yeah. Can also wait a moment and people can absorb things or yeah.
Yeah, I think one of my feedback as What can be improved again is DRA was merged very, very late. And I mean, it's good it wasn't merged like last day of a code freeze, but at the same time, it was quite late and it brought a lot of changes to code base and many things needs to be rebased.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky balancing the, the short development window with the sort of the chaos that code freeze brings about. So yeah, I think that that's a good, maybe something that as reviewers and approvers, we can, think about better prioritizing reviews slightly differently so that we get the really like high impact pieces in early or something like that. But that also relies on the authors a little bit too.
Yeah, good thing was like please speak up. Anybody who can raise a hand and say, but I just wanted to start discussions. So what went well is we I think we did a lot of reviews, and I really appreciate lots of reviewers who did a initial swap of PRs. It was very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, the more people that we have looking at the KEPs, the better the reviews end up being, and also the more likely that we can, pull in like API reviewers or like SIG Node approvers when the KEP is closest to being done. Francesco, you have a hand?
Hello, yeah. So I agree that was a very productive cycle, and I want to mention that the Wranglers initiative keeps doing well, and we have seen also new contributors, which is awesome, joining the Wranglers. Kudos to them. And unfortunately, I have to add an item to things that could improve. That very late in the cycle, we discovered we had long broken lanes in the CI. Okay, this was not blocking with the terminate, but the fact that we missed the broken lanes for quite long time is totally something which we can try to do better, I believe. And of course, I can and should help in that area.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good call out. And yeah, definitely a big +1 on the Wranglers. Huge shout out to everyone who wrangled this season. I'll probably put out an email, thanking everyone who helped with that. I think actually something on the improvement side for the Wranglers is like historically, the last couple of releases, I've been wrangling the Wranglers. And I'm finding that my bandwidth for doing that is actually not, I don't really have enough time and energy to do it properly. So I think I'm thinking about proposing anyone else or like, looking for a volunteer to actually like help wrangle the Wranglers and keep everyone on track with the release process, but also like help answer questions and everything like that. I'll still be around to help with it, but I don't think I did the best job this time about keeping reminders going and keeping the energy of the Wranglers going. So I would love to have some help with that. But I do think that the completion rate that we had is definitely in part due to the Wrangler initiative. Like, these last 2 releases we have had, that initiative has been going and running more smoothly, and I think really does directly correlate with how productive we are. Any other thoughts about the release? Anything that we feel like we can improve on? I do also think something that I think went well this time is we did not get sternly talked to by the docs team. I think we were pretty on top of documentation this time, which we are not always so consistent about. So I think definitely, we're like maybe 2 caps by docs freeze that like needed a little bit of attention, which we did end up getting that energy for. So I think we always can improve on the post code freeze attention that caps require, making sure that documentation and well, that's really the big, and like any blogs or anything are written in a timely way. But I do think we did a decent job this time. Cool. Yeah, if we don't have any other notes, all in all, I think that this was a really productive release, obviously. Just having last release, I looked into it and I'm pretty sure 41 or 33 keps merging was like a SIG record across the project. Like I've never seen anyone that's been so good, and we're continuing that process. So all in all, everyone should be really proud. 134 is really good. I think something that's worth noting is 135 is going to be a shorter cycle with a lot of the holidays happening in the winter. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind when we are taking on work in this next release. We might have a slightly lower capacity. But yeah, in the next couple weeks, maybe next week, we'll probably start the 135 planning process just to get a little ahead of it. Last release, we did do that a little bit late, and we kind of had to jam it in along with other people making presentations about new features. So we'll try to do that. I didn't have any other. Oh.
Yeah, Peter, I think in what went well, we can add the SIG Node CI, like we have like the meeting. We are doing a very good trials. That's my feeling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely agree. I think, yeah, we're definitely staying on top of CI failures. And you know, Francisco did mention like we do have some ways that we can improve, but in general, like I think, you know, comparing this to like a couple years ago, the SIG is very, very on top of CI failures, and SIG Node CI meeting is a really good place to get involved if anyone on this call or who is watching asynchronously wants to. Awesome. I didn't have anything else on this, nor in the meeting generally. So if we're all done, then maybe we can adjourn for this week.
Thank you, Peter, for running the retro. And if you have any other thoughts, please add them to document offline and maybe ping on a Slack or reach out directly.
Yeah, definitely. It would be helpful for us as tech chairs and SIG leaders to, you know, be aware of the difficulties that people are having so we can try to improve. But I think the numbers speak for themselves, and all the improvements are small refinements. So yeah, great job, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.